This hiker was exploring a frozen river when she spotted something astounding spinning in the water. The curious phenomenon that Kaylin Messer saw slowly revolving in an icy river in Washington state was so beautiful and so mesmerizing that she spent hours watching it from a bridge. Few people are lucky enough to glimpse such a spectacle, and fewer still are able to document it like Messer did. Generally speaking, Washington state is known for its formidable and inspirational natural landscapes. A land of glaciers and dark volcanic peaks, it sees countless hikers and adventurers come to explore its rugged gorges, ranges, and forests. What Messer saw, however, was an extraordinary event by the standards of the evergreen state. As both a trained photojournalist and a director of Blue Earth, an environmental nonprofit organization, Messer is experienced at documenting wild places. In fact, she describes her passion as conservation documentary photography with a focus on the relationship between communities and their environment. Some may recognize the brooding vistas of her hometown, North Bend, from the cult TV series Twin Peaks. Yes, the region's transcendental power did not escape the attention of director David Lynch, who artfully explored the themes of nature, beauty, and evil using the land as a potent framework. And it was near North Bend, in Middle Fork Snoqualmie River to be precise, that Messer stumbled upon the strange spinning phenomenon one cold day in January 2017. But of course, like all things, its existence was impermanent. Less than 1 week after Messer found it, in fact, it had disappeared entirely. She first learned about the eerie phenomenon on the Middle Fork of the Snoqualmie River from a video posted on Facebook. Setting out to find it, she drove along the NF 5600, pausing at each bridge to peer across the surface of the water, and eventually she was rewarded. The natural phenomenon was in fact an ice disk, a slab of circular freshwater ice that somehow rotates on the surface of a river. Though some are no larger than dinner plates, others can have diameters exceeding 50 feet. Indeed, the one that Messer found was quite gargantuan. Now, one of the earliest observations of an ice disk was recorded by the Scientific American in 1895. Near the village of Bedford in Westchester County, New York, one reader spotted what he described as a revolving ice cake on the surface of Mianus River. The circular cake of ice is slowly revolving and surrounded for about 2/3 of its circumference by stationary ice, wrote J.M. Bates. Bates was in fact describing an ice disk 25 or 30 feet in diameter. He went on, "There's space of about 3 inches between the revolving cake and the stationary ice." Since then, most ice disk sightings have been confined to Scandinavia and North America. That said, reports have recently emerged from latitudes as far south as the UK. It seems probable then that the only conditions required for their formation are a slow-moving river and sufficiently cold temperatures. Meanwhile, Messer was thrilled to finally find the disc she'd spotted on her Facebook feed. "I was elated to see that the circle was still intact and spinning," she wrote on her website. "I shot a few videos and still images so that others could enjoy this rare sight." Indeed, the experience sounds not only rare and hypnotic, but somehow intimate too. "I spent the afternoon watching the slow rotations and listening to the murmurs of the ice," she added. "A few notches of ice were broken from the nearly perfect circle. It was a very meditative thing to watch," Messer told the Seattle Times after her videos went viral. "It was just kind of like a record spinning on a player after a song was done. I think that's why I ended up staying for a couple hours." Finally, describing the sound of the disc, she told Colossal, "You can hear the sound of the river flowing continuously. Sounds from the ice periodically interjected with very small sharp cracks and groans. Overall, it was a quiet experience to stand along the river watching the ice circle rotate." The physical force responsible for forming an ice disk is called rotational shear, powered by currents on the outer bends of a river. The force breaks a chunk of ice from the surface and grinds it against the surrounding sheet, and this constant rotation eventually files the chunk into a perfect circle. Essentially then, ice disks are formed by eddies, or at least that was until recently the prevailing wisdom. In March 2016, scientists from Belgium's University of Liège published the results of an ingenious experiment, and they were somewhat surprising. Firstly, under controlled lab conditions, physicists created miniature ice disks with diameters of 3.3 inches apiece, which were floated in a still water bath. And how they kept them from moving is quite clever. Ingeniously, scientists froze a piece of nickel inside each disk, which, when magnets were used, allowed the samples to be kept stationary. Thus, when the disks started spinning, just as in nature, the scientists knew it would not be due to any currents. Instead, something else was responsible. In fact, the reason why the disks rotated is to do with water density. Scientists found that as the disks melted, the water they were composed of grew increasingly dense, which caused them to sink. And as they sank, they rotated, like water draining from a sinkhole. Ultimately then, ice disks are a magical and fascinating natural phenomenon, rarely seen but always unforgettable. And thanks to Messer's thoughtful documentary work, we can now admire their beauty for ourselves.